We have made it to Thursday of this election week. We are still we're still counting votes in Tucson. We're Arizona. We don't do it quite as quickly as the rest of the country. It's something we're hoping to work out in 2026. But I am so grateful this morning to have Eric Eggers, the Vice President of Research at the Government Accountability Institute. I already like the name. And he's author of Fraud, How the Left Plans to Steal the Next Election. I think they just did. And so we are going to talk this morning about Zohran Mamdani, the new mayor of New York City. And we have elected a Democratic socialist, I think that's being polite, as mayor. So, Eric, welcome to Winn Tucson. Thanks for joining me this morning.
Hey, it's my pleasure. But let's be very clear. We didn't elect anybody. The people in New York elected them. And unfortunately, I think, part of it is representative of demographic and ideological shifts in that specific region, the bluest of blue areas in a very blue state like New York. They have more citizens on housing assistance than any other state in the country. But I hope it's not representative of a larger trend, but it's great to be with you.
Well, thank you so much. And I have to agree with you. I think that I have a cousin that lives here, and she is not a Republican, but she lives in Manhattan. And I think it is quite obvious that you have, I heard some really high number of immigrants there. I don't know if it was 40 or 50%. But it was a high number, and I only hope that the state of New York, because you have a governor's race there next year, or there is a governor's race. I don't know where you are, actually. I shouldn't assume. Are you in New York City?
I'm in the new New York. I'm in Florida. I'm in where everyone from New York has relocated to. So
yes,
actually,
you are. Yes, you are.
Tuesday night was great for me because with every vote that was cast for the Democrat Socialist / Marxist Communist, my property values went up incrementally. So it's a great day to be in the free state of Florida.
This is true. There's going to be, you can't build more land. I love it. Well, so many people are going to do that. And I saw a sign yesterday that said these states are closed. And Arizona was one of them. That's where the other place I live. I do think Florida gets more New Yorkers. But as we look at this 34-year-old state assemblyman from Queens, I don't believe he's equipped to become the mayor of this city. So is this ultimately going to be a good thing?
Well, let's don't be quite so critical or uncharitable, Kathleen. In what world is he not equipped just because he's 34 and has never held a job? You don't think that equips him to become the head of the largest city in the country and the financial capital of the world? I don't know. Do vibes count for nothing? I mean, theater kids can pull off anything these days, Kathleen. That's what we're dealing with. No,
well, this definitely has been political theater, right, Eric? I mean, you're not going to dispute that.
Absolutely. No, I think, unfortunately, I think New Yorkers bought a bill of goods. And I did Greg Kelly's radio show yesterday. He's in New York, and we were talking about this.
I love Greg.
And he said that, he and I sort of disagreed because I said you can kind of understand why New Yorkers chose on some level this, because it's not so much a ringing endorsement or embrace of Democrat socialist policies. To me, it's actually just a rejection of the status quo of what New York City has become under decades of failed Democrat leadership, right? You've got tons of crime on the streets. People don't want to ride the subway. It's incredibly expensive. If you have a six-figure job, you have to get a roommate, and you can't afford basic things. So it's too expensive and it's too unsafe. And so they said, I want something else. And here comes this guy saying, I will give you something else. It doesn't matter if what he's selling are actually just magic beans in the form of free subway ride or free bus rides and universal health care. He's not going to be able to raise taxes. He's not going to be able to do the things he said he's going to do. And when he's like, okay, I like the idea that you're going to make my life better, and if the alternative is this failed governor who killed my grandma during COVID, you kind of understand it.
Well, I think that people like free stuff, and people like when people say something through a charming voice, and so it's just AOC on steroids for me. I don't know what else to say, and I do believe that because he's not experienced and everything else, that I thought it was very telling that I think it was the head of the fire department there, the chief, resigned the day after the election. He's Jewish. So there's things that are baked into Mamdani's cake that I don't think when they play out and his real views and how he feels about police and all that gets turned into him in that role as mayor. I don't think it's going to be good for New York, and I hope that they remember, and I hope people start to point it out, because I think they're going to be in a world of hurt.
Ironically, there's another election result that happened Tuesday night that I think runs in parallel with what happened in New York City. New York City, I think, on some level, Mamdani was elected because of how expensive New York is. California is also incredibly expensive, but both the Prop 50 race, in which Gavin Newsom spearheaded it, and Mamdani's New York City mayoral race, they kind of had to say, listen, it's less about this local issue, and they tried to invoke Donald Trump. They're running in heavily Democrat areas, and so they realized their best path to electoral victory in blue areas was to make it about Donald Trump. Donald Trump has nothing to do with the mayoral election of New York City, but yet Mamdani invoked him more often than any of his actual opponents on the ballot. Gavin Newsom was very clear. I mean, it's obviously a stepping stone for him to run for president, but he made it about trying to stop Donald Trump, which is genius on Gavin Newsom's part, because now Gavin Newsom has an actual thing on his line item that's not, I run the failed state of California. But I think both politicians brought Trump into what otherwise would have been a local matter that had nothing to do with the president, because they kind of don't want to run on what they actually will do in that local area, to your point.
Absolutely. And, I've never used Newsom and genius in the same sentence, but I think that's that may be the extent of it, though, like a one-day blip on a screen that he got to be smart. But Donald Trump is not running for anything, and unless you're Steve Bannon, who thinks that he likes to toy with people. But I do believe President Trump's got his head down. He's doing his job. And he's delivering on promises, and these people are pie in the sky. And my concern about Prop 50, I think that's what it was in California, is that they're going to take away more congressional seats on an already tight margin. When does that go into play?
Well, if they survive the lawsuit in California, it'll go into play, I believe, next year. So, I mean, they're going to redraw these maps, and so potentially it's up for the redistricting fight will matter in the midterms next year. Texas is doing the same thing. I will say this, though. Perhaps the more troubling thing, if you're a Republican or if you're Donald Trump, I mean, the California win is not great, and it's ironic that they're going to the Republicans in California. I actually do a podcast with Susan Crabtree, and we talked about this on yesterday's episode. Mm-hmm. And she talked to the California GOP, and they're going to push back, and they're going to basically say that they don't have evidence that California saw a study that said there's disparate impact on ethnicity, so they don't have the rationale to be able to do it, which is actually the opposite of what Republicans are arguing in the Supreme Court case in Louisiana on majority-minority districts. So it's going to get a little complicated and tricky, but the more troubling trend for Republicans for the midterms next year is where the exit polls in New Jersey and in Virginia, in which you saw Hispanic support, Latino support for Donald Trump drop from 40%, which is what he got in 2024, down to less than a third. And why that matters is the California redistricting thing was in response to Texas. Texas redrew their map, and they created what they thought would be 5 extra seats, which would be safe for Republicans. But those seats are actually majority Hispanic. And I know in Arizona, you guys are very familiar with this concept. But if Hispanic and Latino support, because of the immigration policies and because of the ICE raids, is dropping, then actually those seats that Texas is counting on for Republicans may not be as safe as they think. So, I mean, that's just a trend line to watch.
Well, and I think it's a valid point. I have a friend who's running for Congress who has been very high in the Hispanic movement in Texas. And so I think that, and she said, you cannot ignore the people that you've just brought into the party, and you cannot ignore their concerns. And this is a cautionary tale. I was so disappointed about the AG race, where they would allow someone to take that seat who clearly threatened to murder people. It was offensive, and so their messaging, whatever their messaging was to get their base out, clearly worked, and we're going to have to counter that, I think, as we head into 2026. And we do not have redistricting here, but we have next year. We really have to have a shift in leadership from Democrat to Republican, and we're fighting against everything that we've had. Everyone remembers Arizona's election in 2020. We're still litigating it, and we've got to make sure that the elections are fair and free, and that we do what we say, and we can't ignore huge populations. And if they're that fickle, that's problematic.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I mean, that's actually, so my book, How the Left Plans to Steal the Next Election, came out in 2018, ironically. And so, we talked a lot about many of the conditions that obviously we did not anticipate COVID, but essentially we laid out, here are the ways in which elections are most easily manipulated and stolen. And then the 2020 election saw the most ballots ever cast in those manners. And it's quite unfortunate. I do think Donald Trump's helping to elevate a conversation about election integrity. But the Republicans have to figure out what they do when Donald Trump's not on the ballot. Obviously, he drives turnout for himself. Virginia, I think you saw what happens when you have somebody who had been oppositional to Donald Trump at the top of the ticket. The rest of it suffers. But you're absolutely right. I think you have to. I mean, Arizona is a state that can lead the way because you guys know what it looks like to have to build a broader coalition than what Republicans have traditionally relied on, and they have to keep those if they're going to have success moving forward.
And last thought. I know you have to go, and I just so appreciate you coming on with me this morning. You started the Government Accountability Institute, I think, in 2012. And how's that? What role will you play in next year's elections in 2026?
Well, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, so we're an educational organization. Our president is Peter Schweizer, and so what we try to do is elevate issues of government corruption and cronyism. He and I do a podcast each week called The Drilldown, which you can find at thedrilldown.com or on any of your podcast feeds. And we've actually interviewed Steve Bannon, who actually helped co-found this organization back in 2012. So I'm very familiar with his third-term rhetoric, but what we try to do is just elevate and educate. Peter likes to compare us to Paul Revere. We try to tell people what's happening, who's coming, and his book next year, I think, which will be out in January, will elevate issues that I think will be of great interest and significance to the country. But we try to just let people know, hey, here's one of the things. If everyone recognizes why the status quo doesn't change, here's why it doesn't change, and here's who's making money off of it. We've elevated issues like insider trading in Congress, which shout out to Nancy Pelosi. She's retiring from Congress just months after she announced that she wouldn't be participating in congressional trading anymore. Isn't that interesting and fun timing? So those are the kind of things we cover, and we'll just try to help make sure the most relevant issues are top of mind for the country as best
Well, they pushed her out. I think, it's a good thing. And I'm glad to see her go. But she was fun to make fun of.
She's great content. She's great content. Yeah.
She is great content, Eric. Well, Eric Eggers, Vice President of Research of the Government Accountability Institute and author of Fraud, How the Left Plans to Steal the Next Election. And there will be a next election, and we have to be ready for it. And Eric, thank you so much for joining me today on Winn Tucson.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
You too.